Do you ever notice something about arguments on the internet? Nobody ever changes their mind. They just state their opinion, right? I got into one of those arguments on YouTube the other day, which honestly I know was probably my first mistake. Nobody's ever walked into the YouTube comment section and come out feeling any smarter. But it was the same argument you hear everywhere. Guy says unions are terrible. I say unions help build the middle class. I say corporations squeeze workers to increase profits. He says the free market fixes everything. And back and forth we go. Same talking points both sides have heard 1,000 times. And eventually, I just stopped replying. Not because I ran out of arguments, not because he or I won. I just realized a few things. First, I'm so exhausted having this fight. Second, nothing I said was going to change his mind. And third, we're fighting the wrong fight. And if you've ever been in that argument on either side, make sure to like, follow, and share. You never know. You might hear something that hits home. It's Labor Lines, and this is when we get after it. So let's get after it. When you strip away the politics, most workers want the same basic things: a decent paycheck, work that has dignity, a chance to provide for their families. And guess what? That isn't partisan. That's just life. Now, to be fair, the guy I was arguing with wasn't completely wrong about everything. There is corruption in the trade sometimes. It happens. Just like it happens anywhere money, ego, and a little bit of greed are involved. Anybody who's been around long enough has seen things that don't make sense. Guess what? That's not unique to unions. That's not even unique to construction. That's just reality. But for some reason, it always becomes the main talking point. Like the non-union company down the road has never had an issue at all. And yeah, some unions have gotten a bad reputation because of something one person did. But one person doesn't represent millions of workers. And on the other side, just because a company is non-union doesn't automatically mean they treat their workers badly. But this is what we do. We grab a few examples and we build the entire argument around that. But here's the thing. If we spend all our time arguing about individual people, we miss the bigger picture. Because a lot of what's happening in the labor market isn't really about individuals. It's about how the system itself is designed to work. Corporations operate under very clear incentives. Their job is to increase profits, increase revenue, and increase shareholder value, and reduce cost. And guess what? One of the biggest costs in any industry is labor. That's not an opinion, that's just how the system was built. But here's where the conversation starts to change. Because in some cases, those costs don't just get reduced inside the company. They get pushed somewhere else, sometimes onto the taxpayer. There's been a lot of reporting over the years about what's often called corporate welfare, where companies receive tax breaks, subsidies, or incentives funded by public money. The Hoover Institution has written about how business subsidies can shift cost onto taxpayers in ways most people don't even realize. And at the same time, there are reports showing that many workers in low-wage industries rely on programs like Medicaid and SNAP just to get by. So think about that for a second. Workers are being told to argue with each other about unions and politics and who's right and who's wrong, while in some cases, the system is being supported by the same taxpayers on both sides of that argument. So no matter what side you're on, you might already be paying for it, whether you like it or not. That's where this conversation starts to matter a little more, because at that point, it's not just a labor issue, it's a taxpayer issue. So when we talk about things like right-to-work laws, prevailing wage, or wage floors, we're not just talking politics, we're talking about the rules that shape how the labor market works. Think about construction for a minute. The work hasn't gotten easier. Projects are bigger, schedules are tighter, safety expectations are higher. The skill didn't disappear, but in some places, wages haven't kept up with the cost of living. So why is that? It doesn't happen by accident, I can guarantee that. Labor markets respond to incentives. When standards are strong, companies compete on skill. When they're weak, companies compete on labor costs, and that pushes wages down. Now, let's get back to that argument I was having. The person I was talking to probably thinks they're defending economic freedom, and they definitely think they're defending their political side. And from their perspective, he's protecting competition. From mine, I'm arguing workers need leverage. But when workers spend all their time arguing with each other, something very important gets lost. And no one's asking the bigger questions. Who benefits when wages fall or standards weaken or when workers are divided? Because history shows pretty clearly the system works best for people with power when workers are busy fighting each other. That's why this matters. Not because one side needs to win the argument, but because the conversation needs to change. Most people arguing online aren't enemies. They're being told they are. In reality, they're workers trying to figure out a system that doesn't feel fair anymore. Look at what people are dealing with right now. Savings are shrinking if you're lucky enough to have them. Retirement accounts are getting tapped way too early with massive penalties. People are using 401ks just to cover medical bills or keep up with the mortgage. Gas keeps going up. Grocery costs increase every time you walk in the store. And at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what organization or political party you belong to, because guess what? We probably agree on more than you realize. And here's the other thing, the union worked for me. And that's my experience. Maybe you had a bad one. I hate that for you, but that's your story. But if we're going to make things better, we have to recognize we're not as far apart as we've been told. And we have to stop letting billionaire CEOs and the political class tell us how to think about each other. Because the real issue isn't who wins the argument online. The real issue is understanding how the rules of the economy affect the people doing the work. And until workers start having that conversation together, we're going to keep fighting the wrong fight. Coming up next week, we're going to take this a step further and talk about what actually happens when workers stay divided. So make sure and tune in for that drop next Wednesday. Don't forget to hit that follow button before you go. And remember, we learn best by shared experience, so keep those comments coming. This is Labor Lines with Alex. As always, my good friends, be safe, be productive, be well.